Hi, I'm Danny. For those that don't know me, I make YouTube videos, primarily on Major League Soccer, but occasionally I'll dabble in some other pro leagues in the US. And today, it's time to talk about the National Women's Soccer League, or more commonly known as the NWSL. Let me just explain something first, because this recent news of the crisis going on has put me in a little bit of a weird position. Because I had already started working on a video on the NWSL, and it was kind of in the same light, same style as my NISA video, and in it, I paint a pretty good picture for the league. But then this news of the sexual coercion scandal hits, and it's like, crap. I mean, I gotta talk about it, right? Like, I can't just pretend it didn't happen. But how do I do it? Do I make the video that I was always planning on making and talk about how great everything is going and then just do a complete 180 in tone and mood and talk about the scandal? Like, it just doesn't feel right doing it like that. So here's what I'm doing. I'm splitting this up into two parts. Part one is going to be the bad stuff, the scandal, and it's going to be a much more candid video, just me talking about it, and I just need to be able to get my thoughts out about this. And then part two is going to be the stuff I actually want to talk about. It's the good stuff. It's what the league is doing right. So be sure to look out for that in the next couple days. For now, though, let's just dive into this mess. Okay, first and foremost, before you do anything, I ask that you actually read the Athletic article by Meg Linehan first detailing these accusations. Because, there's only so much you can learn from reading headlines and Twitter comments and listening to idiots online like me talk about this. No, actually read the article so you get a full picture of what's actually going on. For those that have not read it yet, to summarize, there's this guy, Paul Riley, who's been a pretty prominent figure in women's soccer in this last decade. He's been coaching in the NWSL and even coached a little bit in the league before that, the WPS. And he's been extremely successful. He's won multiple Coach of the Year awards, multiple titles, multiple shields. It's not a perfect comparison, but he's almost like the Bruce Arena of women's club soccer in this country, just without the international pedigree. And it appears that this guy really sucks. Like, we are talking massive a-hole here. There are multiple stories about Paul Riley coming from multiple different players. And these range from him berating players for their weight, for their sexual orientation. With one player, he blamed the team's loss because she brought her kid to the game to watch in the stands, which, like, I don't really understand that logic, but okay. And then with another player, and this player is actually one of the main focuses for the Athletic article, Sinead Farrelly, Paul Riley got mad at her for accepting a call-up to the U.S. women's national team, calling her disloyal and abandoning her teammates, which, okay. This was kind of a big deal because after this, she turned down future call-ups for the women's national team. And at this point, she was kind of one of the bubble fringe players, and people thought she was going to make the final roster for the 2011 World Cup, which after turning down these final call-ups, she ended up missing the World Cup. So yeah, like I said, this guy sucks. But it gets a lot worse. Again, bringing up Sinead Farrelly, in 2011, she was drafted by the Philadelphia Independents, who was coached by Paul Riley. And the coach had taken a particular interest in the rookie. After the Independents lost the WPS championship game, the whole team went out to the bar, and as the night closed, Sinead Farrelly ended up in Paul Riley's hotel room, where the two had intercourse. Now, if this was the only instance, honestly, I don't think this would have been a national story. I think most people would have looked at this as two consenting adults doing some stuff. And yeah, there is the obvious age gap and the ethical dilemma of the coach-player relationship, but even still, I don't think too many people would really care about it. But as it turned out, it wasn't the only story, and it wasn't as black and white as two consenting adults doing stuff. Sinead Farrelly has been adamant that Paul Riley had actually coerced her into his room. And he said stuff the morning after like, remember, you followed me into the room, and we'll be taking this to our graves. Which, I don't know about you, but that kind of sounds like someone who's trying to cover his own butt. There's more stories, like when Paul Riley was in Portland, he traded for Sinead Farrelly, and one night he had convinced her and a teammate to kiss in order to get the entire team out of doing suicides the next day at practice. And then there's other stories of Paul Riley taking out other teammates out on dates and then sending them pictures of just himself in his compression shorts, which, I don't even want to think about that. And a lot of these incidents, by the way, started with Paul Riley paying off the entire bar tab and supplying the whole team with alcohol. And while I don't know if the players were explicitly told that they would be punished, according to the article, they did feel pressure to follow Paul Riley's advances because they did fear they would lose playing time if they didn't. I know, it is dangerous to automatically convict someone as guilty before all the details come out, but in this situation, like I said earlier, there were multiple players who echoed these same stories. Like, clearly, this guy has some kind of pattern wherever he coaches, and we are just now finding out about it. Like, why hasn't there been an investigation before this? Well, actually, an investigation did take place in 2015, years after the initial incident in 2011. I think the reason why it did take so long for the first investigation to happen was because there was no way to report the incident anonymously. Which, like, I don't work in PR, so I don't fully get it, but, like, how is that a thing? I mean, if you're a player, you don't want your name attached to this. You don't want that out in public. I mean, first of all, it's traumatic. You don't want people to know about it. And also, you don't want the coach to punish you if they knew that you filed the investigation. You don't want them to bench you or to trade you to a different market. But anyways, investigation did take place in 2015. This is when he's coaching in Portland. And afterwards, his contract is not renewed at the end of the season. But at the time, it wasn't really known why it wasn't renewed. And most people speculated it was because of poor results with the team. But then, just 5 months later, Paul Riley was named head coach of the Western New York Flash, and then later he became head coach of the North Carolina Courage. And okay, fast forward to today. Now, up until this Athletic article comes out, Paul Riley faced no repercussions for his actions, unless you count him not getting his contract renewed in Portland as a repercussion. But then the article comes out, and all the dominoes fall. He's fired by the North Carolina Courage, NWSL Commissioner Lisa Baird steps down, and the entire league cancels a weekend of games as a result of the fallout from this news. Here's the issue. These allegations at this point had been years old, and nothing happened. In fact, no one even really knew about them. It took a news article. Once that went public, then the NWSL was like, okay, maybe it's time we address this. NWSL Commissioner Lisa Baird originally tried to plead ignorance by claiming she was shocked by these new allegations. But then U.S. Women's National Team star Alex Morgan from the top rope goes on Twitter and leaks out emails from both Sinead Farrelly and NWSL Commissioner Lisa Baird. Sinead Farrelly's email retelling her story, asking the league to please reinvestigate the matter against Paul Riley. And then Lisa Baird's email saying they got the investigation done in 2015 and she was not able to share any additional information, proving that these weren't any new allegations and that they knew what was going on for a long time. First of all, good on Alex Morgan. Talk about looking out for your peers. She was actually a witness back in 2015 in Portland, but for whatever reason, they failed to interview her for the investigation. So yeah, real thorough job on that investigation, guys. So yeah, the NWSL really messed this up. And Lisa Baird stepping down tells me that she was caught in a pickle, she knew what was going on, and she wasn't going to be able to get out of this one. Now, I want to make this clear. I am not here to defend the NWSL in this situation. They totally botched this. But let me try to understand the thought process for this controversy. The NWSL is not the NFL, meaning, while this is the most successful women's soccer league in the US, they're still not exactly booming in popularity with everyone around the country. You know what happens when the NFL faces a controversy? Not much. I mean, yeah, a guy might lose his job, but the league is such a machine that it's always going to have fans to support it no matter what. The NWSL, for everything they've done right, which is a lot, they're still fighting to stay relevant. And a controversy like this, a sexual coercion controversy involving a male coach with female players, that is going to be a huge hit to the league. I mean, players aren't going to feel safe playing in this league, and fans might not want to support a league that allows this. I mean, maybe because it's just sexual coercion, maybe people won't be as up in arms about this, and maybe even some will take the coach's side. So because we don't want any negative publicity, maybe we can get away with not sharing this out to the public and we can actually sweep this under the rug. Again, I want to make this very clear. I am not defending the NWSL. I'm not saying that's what they were saying. I'm just saying maybe, possibly, that's where their head was at. And on top of all of this, this is not the only controversy that the NWSL has faced. Washington Spirit head coach Richie Burke was forced to step down after he made various inappropriate comments. But with that one, the team originally had labeled it as leaving for health reasons. It wasn't until teammates came up and said, no, it's because of the emotional abuse he had put us through. That's why he's leaving. But now this controversy is starting to bleed into MLS as well, because Gavin Wilkinson and Merritt Paulson, the GM and owners of the Portland Thorns of the NWSL and the Portland Timbers of MLS, are now coming under heavy criticism. Now, Merritt Paulson penned an open letter about the situation, and to his credit, he was very transparent, and he admitted where he was wrong. Basically, he comes out and says, yes, the reason Paul Riley was not re-signed in Portland was because of the investigation. But the reason they didn't make it public was because they wanted to protect the privacy of the players, which I kind of get it, I do. But it's clear that there was an obvious disconnect because while they said all this information was shared with the news, the reality is that Paul Riley was still hired just 5 months later by the Western New York Flash. Now, I may be wrong about this, and if I am, please correct me, but I've always been under the impression that the Portland Timbers front office was generally well-liked from the fans, which not all front offices can say that. But now those fans are calling for both Merritt Paulson and Gavin Wilkinson to be fired. Now, Gavin Wilkinson has been suspended from the Portland Thorns, but not the Portland Timbers, which that's kind of weird, right? You're the GM of both teams, you gotta be suspended from both. How can you only be half suspended from your job? That just doesn't make sense. This is a PR nightmare, a PR crisis, a PR disaster, whatever you want to call it. This is really, really bad for the NWSL and really, really bad for soccer in this country. Not exactly the best timing either, because the USL just announced their Super League. It's their women's professional soccer league. Now, I'm not saying this happens. In fact, I don't think it happens, but I think it's a possibility that some of the NWSL players are saying, well, clearly our league is not trying to protect us. Let me go see what this other league is about. And if the NWSL loses some of their big names, some of the women's national team stars, I don't see how the NWSL survives that. Now, as far as where the NWSL goes from here, I'll say right now, I really hope the league does not fold. I mean, first of all, this is the third professional women's soccer league in this country. The first two folded after 3 seasons. It is really hard to start up a professional sports league in this country. And if this folds, I just don't know if people are going to buy into a fourth different professional soccer league in this country. And again, this league has done a lot of things right. I just don't want to see their entire history basically be wiped out because of the mistakes from a few of those in charge. The NWSL has got to win back its trust from both the players and the fans. Now, the NWSL and NWSLPA, that's the National Women's Soccer League's Players Association, recently released a joint statement saying the two had come together and progress has been made towards better protecting players in the future. That's great. That is a fantastic first step. The league and the Players Association working together. I love to hear that. My advice to the NWSL, don't up anymore. Like, this is it, okay? No more strikes. Like, any threat like this needs to be properly reported and made public. Okay? Like, no more vague statements. No more they step down or health reasons. Like, if there's something like this going on and an investigation is taking place, people got to know about it. Because I think people are willing to forgive a bad hire because sometimes people's true colors don't come out until years later. But people can forgive that. What people can't forgive is the league knowing these mistakes and not doing anything to fix them. And if the investigation, a full investigation, by the way, not one where a player is interviewed for 20 minutes and call it a day. No, where everyone is talked to and examined. If that takes place and the person is found to be innocent, great. Then call it off and move on with our lives. But no more hiding stuff. And if the league can show that it's made changes and avoid catastrophes like this in the future, I believe the NWSL will be able to regain its trust in its fan base and continue to grow and continue to succeed. I want the NWSL to thrive, but oh my God, no more of this. No more finding out a guy is a scumbag a decade after he's been coaching in this country. Once again, please actually read the Athletic article by Meg Linehan. Like, I tried to give you the Cliff Notes version of what happened, but to really understand what actually happened, just read the article. I'll leave a link in the bio. Go ahead and check it out. Now, my next video, part 2 of this, will not talk about the scandal. It is going to be all about the good stuff, what NWSL is doing right. And I promise you, it is going to be a much more entertaining watch. But thank you for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you next time.